Hello everybody, I'm Hater and welcome back to another Destiny video where we're going to be creating the ultimate GM Nightfall Warlock build. More specifically, we're going to be talking about two builds that are oriented around getting you through any GM Nightfall. So in today's video, we're going to be going over the overall builds, what mods to put in your armor, what energy your armor should be, the different exotics to run, and options to help fit the needs of whatever GM Nightfall you are in. But before we get into that, guys, if you use the build and you enjoy the video, leave a like on the video, leave a comment down in the comment section if there's any builds you want to see me cover in the future, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you complete any GM Nightfalls with the builds after watching the video, then go and tag me over at Twitter at HaterTheOne to let me know how the build felt. Now we got that out of the way, let's get into the video. And there are going to be two subclasses that everybody uses for endgame content. That's going to be both the Middle Tree Well of Radiance and the Stasis Shadebinder. They're going to be able to fit their own roles respectively and achieve whatever goal you have in mind depending on what you decide to run. For Well of Radiance, your goal is to keep your teammates alive at the same time as abusing your well to increase the damage you deal. And for Shadebinder, your main goal is to CC as many adds as possible so that they don't deal damage to you. With that in mind, we're going to start off with the Stasis Warlock build and talk about the aspects and fragments I recommend running. For the aspects, you're going to be running the Bleak Watcher, which will turn your grenade into a stasis turret that'll shoot slowing darts, eventually freezing your enemies. And for the other one, we're going to be using Glacial Harvest, where whenever we freeze any target, it's going to create these stasis shards around that target and give us melee energy whenever we pick them up. I'll explain why we're using this when we get into the mods, but for the fragments, we're going to be using Whisper of Torment, so whenever we take damage, we gain grenade energy back. Whisper of Conduction to allow all the stasis shards nearby to get sucked right into us, Whisper of Bonds, which will give us super energy every time we kill a frozen target, and Whisper of Chains to allow us to take less damage whenever we are near a frozen target or a stasis crystal. Don't feel obligated to not change them because there are a lot of different scenarios where you might need one fragment or another depending on your build. And if you do feel the need to change them, then keep Whisper of Torment and Whisper of Conduction to stay with the build. The other two slots are relatively flexible, those are just what I like to run. Moving on over to the exotics I would recommend running with the build. We have a few options to use based on who's in your fire team and what you want to run weapons wise. The best overall exotic to run in this scenario is definitely going to be the Eye of Another World, where no matter what you do, just having it equipped is going to increase the recharge rate on all three of your abilities. This is super useful just being a slap it on and forget about it kind of exotic. So depending on what kind of loadout you're running weapons wise, you can just use pretty much anything with this exotic on. Let's say you're running more of a void oriented loadout because you're running the GM Nightfall for Corrupted. Instead of running Eye of Another World because you're using weapons like the Threaded Needle or the Imperial Needle, you could slap on the Nezarec Sin, where now whenever you're getting kills with those void weapons, it's going to give you Abyssal Extractors, giving you energy to all of your abilities, even your super. Another type of loadout you could be running is a weapon with Headstone, because something that got implemented early on in Season of the Lost were stasis weapons. And along with them, we got the perk Headstone, where whenever you get a headshot with this weapon, it's going to create a stasis crystal on the enemy's corpse. Now, this stasis crystal is also able to freeze enemies that are nearby it, proccing our Glacial Harvest, and whenever we shoot that crystal and break it, we can even proc the fragment Whisper of Shards with it. Then to synergize with this, we have the option of using the exotic helmet Verity's Brow, where whenever you get a kill with a weapon that matches your subclass type, i.e. Stasis, it's going to give you a buff called Death Throws, giving you grenade energy back and increasing the damage of your grenades for the entire duration. We don't really care for the second part of the exotic, we only care for the ability to get our grenades back even faster. So something you could do is experiment with perks like Osmosis on weapons or Headstone with other stasis weapons. Now for the final exotic that I recommend that you run, and this one's leaning more towards helping your team than anything. Because if you have an open spot in your team like a Well of Radiance Warlock or a Titan running Bubble / Banner Shield, then you could definitely run the Aeon Soul. For those who don't know what the Aeon exotics do in general, it is a set of 3 exotics, one for each class, that allow you to slot 3 different mods inside of them, each being Sect of Insight, Sect of Force, and Sect of Vigor, all of them filling their own roles in the Aeon cult. but we're only going to be focusing on one of them, and that's going to be the Sect of Insight. Because what it does is that it allows you to create special ammo whenever you finisher an elite enemy. Those are going to be the orange health enemies. And then whenever you finisher an enemy that is considered a mini boss or a boss, including champions, it's going to create heavy ammo for your fire team. Basically allowing you to fit that role of full-on support of CCing your enemies and then also finishering enemies to give your team more ammo to clear the activity faster. And that's going to conclude the exotics I recommend running. Moving on over to the actual mod setup for the build, we're going to be using a few things. First is going to be the wombo combo of elemental shards with elemental charge. This mod combination is the reason why we are running Glacial Harvest, because whenever we pick up a elemental shard that we create from freezing enemies, they're going to be considered as elemental wells for us, giving us energy to all three of our abilities. But because we're using elemental charge also, it's going to count all of those stasis shards as stacks of charged with light, giving us 2 stacks of charged with light every time we pick up a stasis shard. Then for the rest of the build, we have a few options to use those stacks of charged with light on. The most popular mod being Protective Light, giving us damage resistance whenever our shields break. This mod will always be on you whenever you're in a GM scenario, and if you don't have it, then I would highly recommend using the site light.gg or go to the tower every day to check if HaterTheOne is selling it. Because without it, you're going to have a really hard time surviving in the GM whenever you get caught out. For the final mod that you could pretty much use for your armor, it comes down to whatever you are trying to accomplish. If you're using the energy enhancement exotics like I mentioned before, you can use the mod Firepower, where whenever you throw your grenade, it's going to consume a stack of charged with light, giving you right around 10% of your grenade back. However, if you're using the Aeon Soul, you can use the mod Reactive Pulse, which when paired with another arc mod, usually going to be an arc resist, it's going to give you a powerful overshield while you are finishing an enemy. Then if you get surrounded by enemies, it's going to deal damage to all the enemies nearby you, consuming 1 stack of charged with light. I wouldn't rely on this effect though, however, because Bungie recently nerfed how much damage Reactive Pulse does to lower tier mobs near you. So bad, in fact, that you can't even kill Shadow Thrall with it, meaning we're basically just going to use it for the overshield. That's basically going to cover the overall mods for the build. Let's move over to an actual inspection of the loadout so we can talk about where to put the mods effectively so you're not using too much space. For the helmet, you're going to want this to be either stasis or any element of your choosing. And the main mod we're going to fit inside of this is going to be the elemental charge. For the rest of the helmet, you have the option of fitting either 2 power preservations where it'll increase the amount of orbs you get from super kills, or an ammo finder of your choosing. For the arms, you're going to want these to be stasis so that you can fit your elemental shards inside of it. And then after that, it leaves the space to fit any combination of champion mods you want to run. Moving over to the chest piece, you're going to want this to be arc so you can fit your reactive pulse inside of it. But if you're running something like Nezarec Sin or any of the energy enhancing exotics, then you can change this over to a solar chest piece to fit something like Supercharged or Firepower. And because chest armor is so cost efficient, we're able to fit both of our resistance mods inside of it too. Then for our boots, you're going to want these to be void, and this is where you're going to put your protective light. For the rest of the boots, you have the option of running a scav of your choice, and if you have the extra space, you can run the mod better already, where whenever you pick up an orb of power, it's going to instantly start regenning your shields. And finally, moving over to the bond, this is where you're going to be fitting your particle deconstruction and a mod called Resonant Siphon, which will give you energy every time a champion is stunned. Which, now that we've talked about the stasis part of the build, we can still use some of the fundamentals for the Well of Radiance part of the build, where sometimes instead of being a CC machine, you have to be the one that will lay the well. Maybe you have 2 Titans, maybe you have 2 Hunters on your team, and you're designated Well Lock. That, my friend, is where this part of the video comes in, because what we're going to change is some of the mods, the armor energies, and some of the exotics we use. So if you haven't already stored multiple copies of armor, then this is a wake-up call to start doing that. Moving over to the exotics we're going to be using, we're still going to be able to use the Nezarec Sin and the Aeon Soul in this build. Instead, we're going to be dropping the Eye of Another World and the Verity's Brow for 2 different exotics. The first one, which is going to be the Stag, adding on an extra layer of defense when you or a member of your fire team is standing inside of a rift. And then the other exotic is going to be the Lunafaction Boots, where whenever anyone is standing inside of a rift that you create, including your Well of Radiance, it's going to increase everyone's weapons range and cap out their reload speed. There are still other exotics to note that I could mention, like the Phoenix Protocol, but we can nullify that with a set of mods. Because moving over to the armor, we're going to be swapping our helmet over to a solar helmet. Then inside of that, we're rocking a Supercharged with any Scav of our choice. Then for the arms, this can be any element that you want, and you're going to put inside a taking charge, so whenever you pick up an orb of light, it's going to give you a stack of charge with light, at the same time as being able to let you fit any champion mod you like. Something I will note is that the energy on your arms and your helmet are going to be interchangeable depending on what exotic you run, just so that you'll always have a neutral piece of gear to use taking charge with. For the chest piece, we're going to be changing this out to Void so that we can fit the mod Energy Converter inside of it, where whenever we throw our grenade, it's going to consume all stacks of charge with light and give us super energy up to 50% of our max super. This is the reason why I say that we're nullifying the need for a Phoenix Protocol, because Energy Converter can do what it does in mod form. And you're able to throw your grenade and use Energy Converter the moment you lay the well, giving you instantaneous amounts of super energy. For the boots, we're going to be keeping it the same as the Stasis Warlock build, where we're going to be using Protective Light, Better Already, and a Scav of choice. And then finally, on the Bond, we're going to be keeping Particle Deconstruction, and we're going to change Resonant Siphon out for a Focusing Lens. Because whenever you lay your well down, anybody that stands inside of your well and an enemy is affected by stasis, all light energy weaponry are going to deal the bonus 25% damage to the enemy that is affected. And with that, that is going to conclude the video for today. Remember, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments and I will get to them as quickly as possible. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and